Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a good friend of mine, still in the Bills organization, that has been there 15 years, Andy Major. He came in after working for the Dolphins. He was executive director of marketing and escalated to now VP of operations and guest experience. And boy, the timing couldn't be any better. Everyone's so excited about the stadium, which obviously we'll touch on, but he brings a lot more in terms of his Bills and professional sports experience. So, Andy, thanks. Where are you coming from your joining us from your office there?
Yeah, I'm here in my office. Just finished a meeting, with a bunch of folks talking about the new stadium plans and the upcoming season and training camp. So we're off and running.
The call is coming from inside the building, as they always say.
That's
right?
nice when we got to call it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Andy, Don told me you were going to come on, and the one thing that kind of caught my eye in the beginning as we talk about the new stadium, the old stadium. Don, I worked for the Bills in the late 90s for 4 years, and then obviously Don was there forever. And we always talk about
not forever.
Well, it feels like forever. We always talk about duties that people have inside an organization. And I feel like you won the duty draft when you were able to go to all of the different stadiums around the world and see what you would have wanted in a new Bills stadium. What a great job. What a great experience. Can you kind of maybe start with that and, what that was like trying to gather up information all around the world on what would go into a new Bills stadium?
Well, yeah, I was really fortunate to be on a trip with our ownership team and a few others. We went to London. We looked at Tottenham Stadium. Many of us have been to all the stadiums in the country, in our country, especially, Vegas, SoFi, the Meadowlands, Miami, all the new stadiums in our country. But what was really cool about Tottenham was it really was geared toward the fans, and that really resonated with a lot of us. Because we know no matter what, we're really never going to be LA or Chicago or New York City or Miami. We're a small market town. We've got a great, amazing, loyal fan base, blue collar work ethic. And one of the things that I think has resonated with all of us, and that's something that Terry had mentioned early on in this process, was he wants this stadium to be built for Buffalo. So I think we've all heard that, publicly. But everything we're thinking about, everything we're doing with our design, with the ideas for the fans, for the game day staff, it's got to be with that in mind, built for Buffalo.
So when you say that, Andy, to what extent, naturally for the fans, that's huge. We saw the cover of the Madden came out with, it wasn't just Josh Allen, but they had the fans around them. It just speaks to how the national media in the country views the fans as synonymous with the team and the franchise. But what can you tell us, if anything? Josh was mentioning something before about, are there any home field advantage components? I remember when, for example, when Marv came back and I was there, I used to sit with him during the games when he came back as the GM. And the first thing he would do would be like, where's the wind coming from? He goes, oh, what are we going to do in the coin toss? He goes, I want the wind at our backs in the fourth quarter. He would have thought that would give a kick an extra 10 yards or take 10 yards away. Is there any component regarding wind? Josh was telling me he read something about noise. And I don't want you to give away any secrets, but what are some of the discussions about that?
Yeah, no real secrets there. That's a great question. And it's really been, cool to be around that and to hear how, they're thinking through everything from a design standpoint, construction standpoint. It's been just tremendous to work with our team here on some of these things. Ron Rakuya, he leads our business side, and he's got a real focus on a lot of the things related to the fans, the staffing, but also works so closely with our GM and our coach to, ensure that everything we're thinking about is what, they want too, and one of those things you kind of touched on, Don, it's, we want this new stadium to be loud, imposing. When the visiting team drives their bus up Abbott Road and they see this place, they're going to know that, oh my gosh, this is going to be a real tough day for us.
The Roman Coliseum.
Yeah. And then also the design of the venue, like how do you make that work? So, one of the things that's kind of cool about, the current stadium at Highmark is everybody's so close to the field. And when you're out in those seats, yes, this is a very old stadium. It absolutely needs to be, replaced. But when you're actually in those seats and you're in the stands with Bills Mafia, if you're a player looking up in the field and you're on the home team, you're like, this is so great. If you're on the other side of the ball, you're like, man, I can't hear a thing, right? It's so loud and imposing. So we want to make sure with the new stadium that doesn't go away. So for a new stadium, the seats will still be pretty close to the field compared to all the newer stadiums. The seats in the upper level will be closer in as well. So it's almost like on top of the lower level will be the upper level and the club levels. And that gets everybody close to the field, gives you that little louder component. And then what it also does in a cool way, it gives more seats coverage from weather, right? And we know we're not going to have a dome or retractable roof. And again, this whole built for Buffalo mentality, but we also wanted to try to make sure we're thinking about the fans and the game day staff sitting out in those elements on those cold winter days.
Good call.
And if you're in one of those areas under the overhangs, it looks like we're going to be around, 60 to 66% or so of the seats will be undercover. And
what is it now?
If you're not undercover, again, thinking about the fans, the fan experience, and our game day staff, everyone's going to have a place to go. In the current stadium, where do you go to warm up? Where do you go to cool off? Right?
Nowhere.
We do our best with providing misting stations and water areas and things like that and shaded tents, but in the new stadium, they're going to have all that. That's already going to be part of the design and the framework of the building. So that's what's kind of exciting, how, this whole mentality of the stadium has been, how do we do it for football? How do we do it for the fans? And then, but also, and selfishly for me and my job, how do we do it for the game day staff, right? Because we all want to have the best fan experience ever. And arguably, we already are there. Maybe not 100% because we're in such an old facility. But in the new stadium, how do you provide that amazing fan experience? You can't do that unless you provide a great staff experience.
So a couple questions. Are there stadiums that you visited? You were talking about the fans being close, feeling close for the opponent. You've visited so many stadiums. Are there some that you saw were like, yeah, that's it. That's what we want to kind of emulate a little bit in terms of, having them close? That's the first question. Second question, naturally, the stadium was built in like 1973, the current one, and it's gone through renovations, some of which you were part of, Andy. But is there anything, Josh is going to hate me for this because Yankees Red Sox thing, but when I went to the new Yankee Stadium, I kind of liked how there seemed like there were some elements of the old stadium that were brought into the new one. You clearly knew you were in a new stadium, but there were some things that felt the best of the old one. So other stadiums that the seating were close and then the old, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, those are all great questions. And, kind of like we do now. And Don, you remember when you were here with the Bills, I mean, we're always stealing things from our partners and our peers.
Yeah.
And what's cool about working in the NFL and working for the Bills is, yes, we're very competitive when it comes to we want to win, and we all want to win the Super Bowl, every single team. But, we're not info sharing on the football side, right?
Right.
But on the business side, we absolutely info share all the time. We're stealing best practices from other teams. Hey, how do you do it better here? What do you guys do, in Tennessee with the Titans? What do you guys do in Green Bay? Here's how we handle cold weather games. How do you guys handle it? We do that with snow removal too. Like, how do you handle your snow removal plans? So all that kind of stuff is shared, without any hesitation. I'm
sure that question is more one-sided than.
Yeah, a little bit. But, regarding the stadiums, we probably, I don't know if there's one in particular, but I think we all really loved Tottenham Stadium in London. And it wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. And it really gave us a lot of great ideas Populous was the design team there. They're our design team here. And, we think that a lot of what you might see in Tottenham, which, by the way, we're playing, in Tottenham, right? This fall, which is great and also exciting. But that was probably the biggest, arguably, stadium, or the one stadium that we got a lot of great info from. We also, I loved Lambeau. I mean, Lambeau is the Wrigley Field of the NFL. I mean, if you're going to go to one baseball stadium that you've never been to, you got to go to Wrigley at least once. Same in the NFL. If you're going to go somewhere, one football stadium, you got to go to Lambeau. And what we're hoping for is, if you're going to go to one stadium now, in 3 years, you got to go to Highmark Stadium and their new stadium. It's incredible what they've done, how they've incorporated the fans into it, the staff into it, the aspect of the game day atmosphere, not to mention, right, we arguably have, I don't even know if it's arguably anymore, we have the best tailgating fans and arguably the best fans and fan base in the entire NFL. So, people want to come here just to see that now, but imagine in the new stadium, oh my gosh, it could be the next, all right, maybe it's Lambeau and, Highmark in the Buffalo Bills Stadium. So, a lot of excitement there.
So Andy, a couple questions I have. How much bigger of a footprint is the new stadium than the old stadium? How does that help you? Obviously, the fans. How does that help the behind the scenes? And then my second question, maybe a little bit weird or obscure, is it being above ground? Does that change anything? Because obviously, we traveled around the NFL, seen a lot of the stadiums. The Bills Stadium now is unique for being, below ground level. Is anything different because the stadium will be at ground level? Will people notice any difference other than obviously the height of the building as it come down Abbott Road?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize when you walk into the current stadium at the lower level, you're at row 39 from the field, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's a really cool question too. I mean, if you're driving by today and you've never been inside our stadium, you're like, oh, it doesn't look so big. And then you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, this place is huge. I think the difference there, Josh, is, you're going to drive by the new stadium and go, oh my gosh, look at this place. This is gigantic. So what's kind of neat is the new stadium size will be at the level of the current lights of our current stadium. So if you drive by and picture the top of our new stadium being at the level of the lights, that's what's going to be seen, and maybe will be a part of when that, visiting team drives by, like, oh my gosh, look at this place. This is unbelievable. The other cool thing you mentioned, about the comparison here, I think the biggest thing your fan base and our fan base is going to see, and our staff, everybody working there, is the concourses. We did, I think, the best job we could back in 2014 with the renovations, where we removed all the portable concessions from the concourses, and we remodeled every concession stand for better efficiency. But the space of those concourses is still the space of those concourses, right, from 1973. So it's hard to get around those areas, especially at halftime or, when people are taking breaks between quarters, et cetera. It just does still get jammed up, even with all those changes. So, in the new stadium, at the very minimum, all those areas will be double and sometimes 5 times the width of the current concourse space. Nice. So the flow for pedestrians, the getting around at halftime, all of that is going to be a major upgrade. And all those spaces are going to have areas to go warm up, grab a drink without having crazy long lines or trying to get through all these masses of people. So comparing one to the other, I really think that's going to be the biggest difference that people will see, is there's more space for us to get around and move. And that I think is a big win for everybody.
That's huge. So, man, listen to you. This is timing is so perfect. I'm still pinching myself at how, when we talked a few weeks ago, Andy, I didn't know how much we were going to be able to get into the stadium, but since ground broke, it feels like all this information could be shared more freely, and this is really incredible stuff. But really want to talk too about how it is that you got your career path, that you got to this point where you're such an integral part of not just the new stadium, but the Bills fan experience. And
I'm sure our listeners will tolerate you talking about the Dolphins. They probably might not enjoy that portion of it, but they'll at least tolerate your story, how you ended up here.
yeah,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm a Rochester guy. I grew up in Penfield, New York, and I've always been a Bills fan ever since we moved up to upstate Western New York. But I followed, my dream of working in sports. I knew I was never going to be able to play in the NFL. And I played college football at a small school in Pennsylvania called Slippery Rock University,
Yep.
Division II school, did the best I could there. But came to the realization, it's going to be working in sports, not playing in sports, right, for a professional career. So I went where the jobs were, and I ended up in Miami. I was working with the Florida Marlins, went to graduate school at University of Miami down there, and landed a job with Orange Bowl Committee that turned into the Florida Marlins, that turned into the Miami Dolphins. The owner at the time, who was the owner of the Marlins and the Dolphins, was named Wayne Huizinga.
Yeah, Marconi talked about him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just a tremendous man and great family, and really treated the staff as part of, his own family, and let us do our thing. And it really reminds me of the Pagulas and how much they care about Western New York, how much they love the Buffalo Bills and the Sabres, and, also multiple, sports that the two owners owned at the time, back with the Huizingas and now with the Pagulas. So for me, it's like, man, it's a dream come true to be working for my hometown team and being up in Buffalo, New York, and Orchard Park. It couldn't be any more, thrilling for me to be able to kind of be a part of this new stadium construction and finally be a part of a winning franchise that, is happening right now, right in the middle of this amazing, story that's being written. But, long story short, we wanted to raise our family in the Northeast and get them back closer to Rochester and Western Pennsylvania, where my wife's family's from, and Rochester, where my family's from. So here we are. It all kind of luckily worked out, and I feel blessed and fortunate to work with such great people and a great ownership team and great coach and GM and great business guy as well, with Ron, Brandon Bean, Sean McDermott, and Terry and Kim Pagula. It couldn't be any better.
That's a great hometown success story.
Yeah,
We're on the Cover One Network, which is a bunch of different football related podcasts. And I know there's a lot of people that will watch our show that are just kind of football junkies. And this is a question I've always had, and you're kind of the perfect person to answer it after hearing your biography. What exactly does the Orange Bowl representative do? Because it seems to me that that's one of the cushiest jobs. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it seems like that's a great job to have. You see those guys on the sidelines, like at the end of the season with a fancy jacket on, and they're just like giving away stuff.
No, Josh, that's funny. That kind of reminds me. I remember when I first took that job at the Orange Bowl Committee, what was that job? It was one bowl game a year, and it had a nighttime New Year's Eve parade component back then, in the city of Miami. And my dad would just say to me, hey, what are you doing the rest of the year?
Right, exactly. Good for your dad. That's my exact question.
And who are these guys wearing the orange jackets? What are they all about? No, it's kind of funny. I mean, at the time, we were a small staff, maybe 12 to 15 full-time staff. And honestly, the busiest part of that year was all the off-season and planning to get to the game and to get to that parade. And then the orange jackets, believe it or not, many of them headed up committees that dealt with the game or the parade or the two teams when they came into town. So, for example, one guy or one lady wearing the orange jacket, they were Orange Bowl Committee members, and one person may oversee visiting team travel and visiting team events. So for that week or two that team would come into town, went back when I was there, it was like Notre Dame, Lou Holtz, Bobby Bowden, Florida State, University of Miami, Tom Osborne from Nebraska. It was the Big Eight, and it was against the independent, schools most likely, and we always had a national championship at the Orange Bowl. It was Colorado when they were good. They were undefeated back in the day, playing undefeated Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. I mean, we had some amazing historic games there that I was lucky to be a part of early in my career. And but they head up committees that deal with all different things that were part of that game week leading up to the game, leading up to the New Year's Eve parade. So they kind of do some stuff, but a lot of it is also cushy, and they're out in the field with the coin toss. They're getting photo ops and trying to shake hands with the coaches and do their thing, as well, take advantage of what they're doing. But it was definitely a job.
So Andy, in your current position, do you have a lot of departments under you, game day and otherwise? What are ushers? I think last time I was with you, it was after COVID. First of all, oh my gosh, there probably isn't anyone in Western New York happier than you to have gotten past all of that and not have to deal with it anymore. I just remember it just seemed to linger, and things were, opening up different places, different parts of the country faster than others. And you still had to, do you think back, holy cow, I actually worked through a pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us just want to move forward, right, and not look back on any of that. It wasn't a great time. It was a very, very challenging time. I was, very happy to be busy during that time. A lot of our staff were at home. Our ownership team and our executive team, we met every single day at 12 o'clock sharp on a phone call with Kim. And we just went through what we were doing minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, and then dealt with it, to the best of our ability. Yeah. I won't belabor it. I'm just glad it's behind us.
Sure, exactly.
And we're moving forward. And, one of the things, and Don, you remember this, I mean, our training team, both the previous regime of trainers to the new regime of trainers, and our stadium ops team, our cleaning staff, our full staff that work here day in and day out, they're known for providing a very safe, clean environment. Mm-hmm. We got recognized many different times about all the protocols we had in place before COVID, and even now since after COVID. But we're already doing a lot of different things that kind of were just ramped up a little bit during that time period. And I think for the most part, I mean, it couldn't have gone any better, knock wood. We were able to play the whole season with no fans. We worked hard battling that with New York State to try to get fans here. And then they finally acquiesced for the playoffs that year. Yep. And we had fans. We had a limited number of fans, and we won a couple of playoff games with those guys and ladies here at that game. And made it happen. So we're kind of proud of what we did. Yeah. But it wasn't fun. It was tough. And we're just, we're moving forward, and let's hope we have another couple of home playoff games this year. We do get that Lombardi.
No doubt. Yeah, you're on your way to that. And so on game day, with so many things under you, what would have to happen for somebody to be like, get Andy during the stretch of a game? I mean, you've got so many people there, but I have a funny story to share with you after this that Josh and I were talking about before you came on. But
I mean, I'm all over the place on game day. I hold a few pregame meetings with our sheriff team, our security team. Zach Rukowski, who runs our guest services department. Yeah. He and that group are just incredible. They have 600 game day staff under their purview. So that's a big department. A big part of my job is the game day staffing. And you mentioned briefly like the ushers, the ticket takers, the guest services staff, our ADA services teams. So, that's just one component. But to get me on game day, I'm available. I've got my radio, I've got my phone. I'm all over the stadium trying to touch base with people. But during the game, I'm really focused on the command center. And I work real close with Chris Clark, who, Don, arguably two of my two favorite people I've ever worked with are you and Chris. And, Chris and I work so closely together with our law enforcement agencies, Erie County Emergency Services, and Dan Nevereth and that group. The new sheriff, John Garcia, who's been a great guy to work with, and his team. And we're just trying to make sure, hey, everybody's safe. Traffic is going as best as we can. Fans are getting through the gates as best we can. But if I get a call, it's usually about something not going well.
Right.
And I remember a couple of years ago, I got a call. I was starting to get calls from everybody. The traffic ingress was crazy for our home opener a couple of years ago, and we just couldn't figure it out. There were no accidents. It was the home opener, but usually fans are coming in early. And what it was there was a boot drive going on by some of the local fire departments around the area. And, we're all supportive of that kind of thing, but and they didn't realize it, but it was causing traffic delays because people were slowing down to give a buck or some cash or what have you to help the local fire departments and the boot drive on the first game of the season.
Wow.
In the morning of pregame. So long story short, we fixed that, and they're doing their boot drives at different times. They were great to understand that issue, but the fans were calling. My Melissa from the suites and her suite members are calling, and our sponsorship team. Their fans, their partners couldn't get here. The fans are calling. So it was kind of crazy. I'm like, why is my phone ringing off the hooks? This is nuts.
Makes sense.
So we figured it out and fixed it for the rest of the season. But it takes something kind of like that, right? Unfortunately, it's something negative, right?
How much of the game do you get to see?
Hardly any. I mean, I hate to say that. I wish I could see a lot more. During COVID, that's the most football I've ever watched.
Right.
Silver lining, I guess.
In the command center with everybody there prepared for whatever might happen, and we're looking at each other, and the phone wasn't ringing ever, which it shouldn't, right? There's no fans here. But now, in a normal situation, if I usually am dealing with something, I'm on the phone, I'm looking at monitors for the gates, or I'm looking at the parking lots, or there's an issue with a fan in one of the parking lots. There's a concern. Maybe it's safety, maybe it's something else. And we've got the eyes in the sky on the entire parking lot, inside the bowl. So there's always something that I'm kind of dealing with, unfortunately. Usually everything gets resolved for the most part. It's not a terrible situation, but I'm pulled away. I can't just sit there and watch the game, right?
That's tough. So the situation I was going to bring up, I remember when I was there, this is going way back. It was the 90s. It was a December game. It was snowy. I think it was a big game, sold out, Dolphins probably. And there was a porta potty just inside the gate, I think, a guy goes in it, and he's dressed in a full snowmobile suit, and he's in there, and two of his buddies think it's a good idea to lay a shoulder into the porta potty, which goes sideways on the ground, but even more so, it went like downhill a little bit. So as you can imagine, the gravity we're all staring to watch, like, what is this guy going to do? Is he going to come out and just kill these two guys? The door busts open. This arm with like a fist comes out, like, I'm okay. He comes out soaking in the nasty, whatever, everything on the bottom of the porta potty came on him. And we're like, watch out. He's going to kill his two friends. But this will shock you. He had a few drinks in him, and he took it way too well. He was like, oh, you guys. So we were talking about, as nasty as that is, then he had to go and sit in his seat where, of course, it's shoulder to shoulder next to some stranger covered in. Would that have been a call you'd have gotten, and how would you handle it?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, Don. I mean, unfortunately, I remember when I first took this role back in, I think it was 14. I don't think I realized quite sure what I was getting myself into. We were averaging almost 30 arrests and 140 ejections a game back in those days. And, here I am coming in as the ops guy and the fan experience guy, and, didn't kind of quite realize to some extent some of the things that were happening. And I mean, I deal with that kind of stuff. And I think the good news is, we wanted to kind of help create organically a culture change, not just with the game day at the fan base, but with our game day staff as well. Like, hey, you can tell us when something's going wrong. We're going to make some changes for the better. It's all going to be little things that hopefully will mean a big difference and big change over time, and nothing's going to happen overnight. So I'm happy to say, last year we averaged our all-time low, 2 arrests and 22 ejections a game.
All right.
Helps that the team's good too.
And you know what, Josh? Absolutely. So one of the things, we were making gains every year. Those numbers went down and down and down, and people started to notice a little bit of a difference. And I always would get asked, well, what's happening? What are you doing? Well, added more visible law enforcement with, armed sheriff officers. We increased our guest services staff almost double, so that fans see people when they arrive. They can talk to people when there might be an issue. When they get to their seating area, guess what? There's actually security there. When they call about an issue, they can text it discreetly, or they can call. They don't have to physically go to an usher every time. So it's little things over the course of time. Disney style parking, everybody was up in arms that was going to be terrible. Well, it became this better situation. Fans later started calling us to say, hey, thanks for doing this. Now there's not cars driving through the parking lots trying to reach a buddy with all the tents already up. It's one car, one space. Everybody comes at the same time, and we're efficient and we're safe with the parking lots. So, we paved the parking lots. God forbid you didn't have paved lots. I mean, people treated the lots better. We hand out garbage bags and waste receptacle bags before the game to fans that are tailgating. And then we pick all that up. So when they come out after the game, it's already kind of clean, or much cleaner than it ever used to be. So a lot of little details, a lot of little things. And then, Josh, you hit it on the head. We always said to our staff, look, we're doing all this stuff, and look at the difference it's making. Watch what happens when we start winning.
Right.
Watch what happens when we start winning. And now we've been winning for the last few years, and those numbers now they're steadily low. Fans care about their experience. Nobody wants to get thrown up on in their seats because someone's too drunk behind them. Nobody wants to have broken tires because they drove over glass that people are breaking in the parking lots. So like all of that, I'm not saying it's gone away 100%, but it is so much better and so different than it ever used to be. And I think the other thing I'll just mention, you guys have seen this, and it started really with Bills Mafia and how that has grown organically, where we are now recognized as such a giving and charitable fan base. Forget about how much fun we have and how great we are tailgaters, across the league. But look at what we do and how we rally as a community when something happens. And it started kind of with going to the playoffs the first year.
Yeah. The Andy Dalton thing, and people started to take pride and ownership of being a fan, and the expectations I feel like for the fans have been raised too, where you can't just go in there and act like a drunken idiot, because you're going to end up on social media and you're going to give the rest of Bills Mafia a bad reputation. Yeah. And there's almost like some peer pressure now from the fans to, excuse my language, get your shit together, like be an adult, have fun. Get drunk, but be an adult, and don't become a meme on social media. Let me ask you a couple more quick ones before we let you go, Andy.
Sure.
So in the new stadium, is there anything like Hall of Fame related, museum related? You talked about Lambeau. I know that they have an amazing Hall of Fame there. And then secondly, is there going to be anything for fans to do on days that there's no game?
Yeah, I can tell you, we don't have those plans at all finalized yet. But that's something that our design team is looking at all the time. What are we going to do with the old stadium, right? Like that's going to be initially a parking lot, but there's also ideas, that could be something else. Wall of Fame related, Hall of Fame related. We have a great team store. We're looking to expand upon that. The new stadium's going to have this beautiful entry area called Family Circle. So yeah, incorporating the history and you guys, Don, you mentioned it earlier too, like incorporating the history of the Buffalo Bills, of our community, of older stadiums, the Rock Pile, the Ralph, Highmark Stadium, the new Highmark Stadium. All of that's going to be part of, fan experience elements in the new stadium and the surrounding area. So, that's not finalized yet, but definitely on our, radar and part of our mindset as we move forward.
One more, I opened up, I told people on our Slack channel that you were coming on, and a couple of people had some quick questions. Are the players going to practice still in the field house, in the grass fields on the other side of Abbott Road? And someone asked me, will there be a tunnel underneath Abbott Road, which I felt like I already knew the answer to. But how are the players going to get from the field house or the grass fields over to the new stadium if and when they ever practice in the new stadium? Is there any talks about that?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about this whole new stadium plan is the training center, our office areas, the practice fields. I mean, those are already, arguably right there at the highest league, highest level across the NFL. When we bring in free agents, we want them to feel like, oh my gosh, I just came from Clemson and Alabama and Penn State and wherever I came from in the college level, and the Buffalo Bills facilities are as good or better than where I'm coming from. So all that's still going to be in play. We're not 100% sure how we're getting everybody across yet for game day. We may just come right to the stadium. They may transfer over and do walkthroughs from the training center and over. I don't think we're going to have a tunnel. I know we've talked about that. Everything that you can imagine has been like a topic of discussion and an idea. But we still love hearing from our fans and from our internal teams about, hey, what about this? What about that? And we share it all the time. So I don't think we're having a tunnel.
Fair enough. But there's a hot,
and they'll have a parking lot right next to the stadium, and they'll have all the amenities that they've asked for, as part of the process. Because every department, which is also a really cool concept and thing, we've all had a little bit of a say in what the new stadium is going to be like. I mean, ultimately, it's our owner's decision and all that new stadium construction team and the design team, to make sure it's efficient and we're on budget and it's everything we hoped it'll be. But that's been really great to have our staff as involved, as they have been. And even to some extent, and a lot of extent, the players have been involved through, the football team too.
Yeah, that's great. I know you mentioned Clemson. I know you know a thing or two about that. You've been there.
You could do the walk, right? They park the buses and they go down the hill and touch the rock, and that's an amazing experience.
It's so cool to see some of the college football traditions and see how the Buffalo Bills, we have our own traditions, as well, and we don't want to lose sight of that. And maybe there can be some new traditions too that get created.
Sounds good. I have, before we do the 2-minute warning here, one request. And as a friend, I don't think this is too big of an ask for us. But in the new stadium with all the monitors, could you just have our podcast running on like a loop?
Yeah,
give it some thought.
Let me see what we can do with
that. Yeah. That's a kind no. I just met Andy, but that was a kind no.
Yeah.
So Andy, before we go, we play something with our guests called the 2-minute warning, where we ask you 10 fun rapid fire questions and try to keep it to under 2 minutes or less. So Don, go.
Okay. Your most interesting place to watch a Clemson or Florida game?
Interesting, I would say my daughter's apartment at Clemson.
Oh, there you go. That works.
It was a party with like 50 people, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a fun time. 3 people, dead or alive, you'd want to have dinner with.
Dinner. Jesus, my dad, who unfortunately passed away last year, and you know what? I might say Ronald Reagan.
Oh, there you go.
All right. So you are entering an arena. You're a big deal. Dry ice. What's your entrance song?
Oh, geez. It's got to be Metallica, Enter Sandman.
Nice. Were you there at the show last summer? I'm sure you were.
It was a lot of fun. That is arguably the best entrance song in all of sports.
Great show.
Piggybacking on that, we usually ask people the best concert they've ever been to. I'm going to ask you, is there anything in the new stadium that will facilitate any kind of events that are not able to be at Highmark Stadium now?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, the old stadium now, we have one tunnel for these concerts to set up their staging. The new stadium's going to have so much more space, way more entry points for the field and the setup staging. Yeah, that's going to be a much better, situation from an operations standpoint for sure.
And your best concert also that you've ever seen?
No, you're going to make fun of me here. I hope you don't. But,
No,
but I'm going to tell you, like, to this day, it was Michael Jackson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Back when I was in college.
That's
awesome.
okay.
That's
We've heard worse.
Oh, yeah.
There's many other great concerts that I've been lucky to be a part of. The Stones here in 15 was incredible.
Yeah.
U2 both in Miami and U2 here. We've had a lot of great shows here at Highmark Stadium, but for some reason that Michael Jackson, I'll never forget it.
Yeah, King of Pop. A favorite Buffalo restaurant and what dish you get there?
Oh, geez. There's too many. I don't want to get in trouble when I go to these restaurants.
Fair enough.
Locally, I love Manja's and OP Social.
Yeah.
They're both, the food is, I've never, ever had a bad meal at either one of those places. But I love going downtown to Hutch's. And I also love Old School Chefs is still a lot of fun, and getting that chicken parm and spaghetti parm. So I've got a lot. So I won't tell you my favorite. Those off the top of my head, they're all
very,
great.
very
Those were solid. Those
very
were good.
diplomatic. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, Bugs Bunny. Come on. Easy.
Yeah, agreed. Nice. The most annoying fan base, I don't want to have a hot take here, but the most challenging fan base that you saw the Bills having to go into, or in college as well?
I wouldn't put anyone. I wouldn't say anybody in particular is the worst fan base or the toughest fan base, to be honest with you. I mean, I think when teams are struggling, I think those are the fan bases that are maybe arguably the toughest, and the tickets are cheap.
Good point.
I had the most tough time I think in Oakland was a real tough fan base.
Yeah.
When they were in Oakland at the Raiders. But I also saw it when they were good and the fan base was good, and their security teams were amazingly good at how they handled things there. Yep. So that was probably my toughest challenge. All fan bases have their, even Buffalo Bills, right? We hate to talk about table jumping, and it's so cool that it hasn't been brought up, and I'm probably a knucklehead for bringing it up myself. But to see how that's not the main topic of our fan base anymore, and it's about how much fun they have of tailgating and how charitable they are and how loyal and passionate they are about the Bills and this team. I love to talk about that nationally when people start bringing up maybe other things. So
well, we're local here in West Seneca, so the table we're over the table thing. Like I said, we grew up as a fan base, right? Like the fan base itself has kind of grown up. A couple more here. Can you drive a stick shift?
Absolutely. Love driving a stick shift.
There you go.
Love it.
All right. And your top 3 favorite sports movies of all time?
Oh my gosh. I lean right to Rudy.
There you go.
I love, Denzel Washington's. I'm blanking out on that.
Remember the Titans?
Remember the Titans. Oh my gosh. And I, so many come to mind, but then probably Hoosiers.
There you go.
Those are 3 that just right away come to the top of mind. We've had this discussion in the office, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what about,
exactly. Yeah.
What about that one? But those 3 come to mind right away.
All right, last one. Don does not know this question, and he's going to be angry at me. So my mission this year, Andy, is to get Don to go to the stadium. And we're gonna video him in the parking lot, and he has not been in the stands as a fan since 1986. As I figured, you're the man to ask. Can you guarantee that Don will have a good guest experience if he and I go to the stadium and we use the footage for our show?
Yeah, let me know when you're coming, and I'll make sure you guys have the shots you're looking for.
Beautiful. He's mad at me now, Andy. I'm in trouble.
Is that on the record then? All right.
We'll show you all the smiling game day staff and steer you away from the ketchup and mustard stuff.
See, it can all be tax deductible because we're doing it for the program.
Really?
So
have we looked into that? Are we sure about that?
Well, we're not sure, but anything to get you there will be because it'll be great content. I feel like it's time.
Speaking of great content, Andy, I knew was going to be a great conversation. It was even better. It was fantastic. Thanks so much. So interesting.
Thank you, Andy.
No, Josh, Don, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Go Bills, and I look forward to a great season on the field and off the field this year.
Yeah,
All right.
awesome. Thanks
care.
so much.
Bye, guys.
All right, Andy.